Okay. Let's see. Okay. Welcome back to the live stream. So I want to start doing what I wanted to do, which I kind of started this week, was a kind of React Wednesday, I guess. And so the problem is I didn't notice because I don't watch my stream, like I don't watch my own VODs daily, at least not to the extent I should probably. But So I just noticed that the VOD was not keeping the sound. It's something with my OBS, I guess, probably went wrong when I was like doing like tracks, and for whatever reason, track one, because I believe all the tracks were track one on track one. Um, Track one wasn't acting as a primary like stream VOD thing, whatever. So those reactions earlier this week are not applicable, basically. I think because I feel like the Fleekazoid react I did, I think I'll just record a second reaction because I wanted to, because I thought my insight was pretty okay with that. So I wanted to so I wanted to reshoot it. So I might do that, but it's just not going to be a live reaction, Um, because I already watched it earlier on stream. So I hope that will work in it. But anyways, now we've got the Fat Electrician. This is a good old hour-long video. Should get a nice long, thing to upload on YouTube. Also, go check out YouTube if you haven't, because I have my second channel linked down there. I'm not uploading so much to my main channel. I want that to be more professional. But my second channel, where I'm mainly posting React content, I'm keeping up with that. So go check that out. And if you are coming from the React channel, because that's also been doing some decent numbers, got some subscribers from that as well. Um, say hi in chat because that also helps. But anyways, there's really not much else to add on. So we've got the Fat Electrician, the ghost of World War II, Matt Urban. Let's see what Nick has to say about him. I always do enjoy these videos, so let's get into it. And I am interested in history, so maybe I could add some insight. I'm not like a pro, but you know,
Everybody knows about Audie Murphy, but nobody knows about this guy who arguably has more military decorations than him.
arguably,
Today we're talking about Matt Urban, aka The Ghost. I know what you're thinking. How
the
do you acquire the
goats.
nickname The Ghost? I'll give you a hint. It's because he has 7 purple hearts.
Okay.
The man was legitimately unkillable. He was once read his last rites on the battlefield by a priest after the surgeon said that he was for sure going to die. He then proceeded to survive, get shipped off to England, recover in the hospital, where he then escaped from the hospital, made his way back across an ocean, and hitchhiked to the front lines of World War II to rejoin his men. And that is one of the 2 times that he escaped from the hospital to return to his men in frontline combat.
2. Also, like, I am not a very strong believer in God. I would not consider myself like a Christian or anything like that. I am skeptical at best, but there are times where it's like you kind of like question your view on reality. Like people, because like people will survive like things you really think they really shouldn't. It's like, but how? Like, was it like how were they lucky enough to like survive that? Like, obviously coincidence and stuff, but there are times where it's like it's just happened so many times. It's like, huh, kind of thing. But I mean, at the end of the day, I have more acceptance like of science because like I'm not like really strong with faith-based things. Like I need stronger evidence than that, in my opinion. But I mean, I'm not disrespecting anyone who is religious. I'm just saying like my point of view. Um, But yeah, there are definitely times where like you kind of question. Like to me, it's like you kind of question: is there really like a god? Because like that's the thing. Like I'm not against the idea. You know, it's like I just want some evidence, so to speak. And obviously, that's very hard to come across.
It is but a scratch. A scratch? Your
A
arm's
scratch.
In addition to his 7 Purple Hearts, he also has the Medal of Honor, the Legion of Merit, 2 Silver Stars, 3 Bronze Stars with V.
I'm not really a fan of Monty Python. I'm not sure if it's just British humor, old humor, what the case is, but I think I've watched a portion of it. It wasn't really to me. It wasn't because it's comedy, and it wasn't really that funny to me. But I don't know if that's just cultural or just time issues.
And the French Croix de Guerre. As an infantryman, he has a confirmed kill against an enemy fighter plane. He also has 2 confirmed kills on enemy tanks that he took out by himself on foot. He once participated in an amphibious landing, which to be fair doesn't really sound that impressive until I tell you that he didn't do it in a Higgins boat like everybody else. Him and his new buddy Al Shellbach made the amphibious landing by themselves inside of a fucking rowboat for reasons that we're going to get into right after.
A rowboat? Like, are we talking like a wooden rowboat? Are we talking one with like a solid hull at least? You know, like it's not some inflatable raft. It's like an actual proper boat.
Word from our sponsor.
Delete me.
Showing off your chesty again.
My what?
Your Mustang armament chesty.
Oh yeah, I got something so it's kind of quiet for kids' is nap time.
Yeah, where did you get a?
I love how it's like he presents his ads like she doesn't understand guns so much, and I'm not sure if she does or not, but yeah, if I find it an interesting introduction.
Professor, you can't just buy those.
Don't worry about it.
What? No, I have to worry about it. It's like legalities and stuff, Hannah.
It's like that Lil Wayne quote.
Little Wayne.
What?
Real G's move in silence like lasagna? You're a housewife. All right, you guys know the deal.
Also,
online.
I think I've noticed this before. I'm surprised I've never brought it up, but I think he's got runes tattooed on his fingers, rather, which is interesting.
Subscription model. You give them money every month. They turn around and make sure that data brokers on the internet aren't selling your personal information. What does this actually do in practice? It gets rid of your personal info, isn't just floating around the internet for anybody to be able to buy for a couple of bucks. Okay, I know what you're thinking because I thought the same thing. I don't want to give Delete Me all my personal information either.
Right.
I'm trying to get my personal information off the internet. Why would
True.
I give it to an internet company? You don't really have to give
True.
your personal information. It's honestly kind of creepy. I gave them my name and my email address, and that was it. They came back to me a couple of days later and was like, is this your address or one of your previous addresses? It was. Is this your mom's full name?
Well, honestly, but that's the thing. Like, sure, you don't give them all that stuff up front, but but especially if they're asking more or less directly like that, they're able to deduce it. Now, I'm not sure if it's just, oh, this pops up and you said hit get rid of, that pops up, get rid of it, you know, so on and so forth. And Delete Me therefore has no actual evidence, so to speak, of whether or not it is your address or something. And it's just like, I just don't want that floating around on the internet, because even if it's not my address, I don't want someone, you know, like a stalker fan in his case, because he's, you know, an influencer, going up to some random house thinking it's mine and being like, hey, does Nick the fat electrician live here? And it's like, that's not even his state, much less a house he's ever lived in. So, I mean, from that perspective, it could work. But if you have to like confirm, is this like your mother's maiden name, or is this your address or a previous address you lived in, you know, instead of just deleting it with Delete Me having no actual proof of whether it is or not, I guess that could work. But if you have to like tell them whether or not it is, then they could just be like, hey, guess what? The fat electrician lives here, to like some data broker still. Like, even if initially you don't have to give them your personal information.
Uh-huh. Is that your dad's full name? Uh-huh. Are you related to this person? Did you go to this high school? They knew everything about me and knew exactly who I was just by me giving them my name and my email. All I had to do was answer a couple of yes or no questions as to whether or not that was in fact me, which it was, at which point they're like, cool, go ahead, pay for our subscription service. We'll go to all.
So yeah, in that case, they're still getting access to your personal information, which they could still sell on the internet unless their terms and conditions have legal requirements stating that they explicitly won't do that, and then you could in turn sue, delete me if they do. That would be like the only way. It's like basically at that point just a trust me bro moment. Like whereas like if you just hit delete, regardless of if you confirm whether or not it's true, delete me has no reason to believe or definitive reason to believe it's true. Okay. I don't really refill my water bottle thinking I won't burn through it so much because I don't usually, but I might have to go down for a refill.
The data brokers where we found this information and force them to delete it. And as long as you keep being a paying member, they will continue to monitor all these data brokers for your personal information. And if these data brokers do acquire it again, they will force them to delete it again. In my opinion, it's definitely worth it. I've been using them since before they were paying me to talk about them, and I'm going to keep using them after they quit paying me to talk about them. If you want to give it a try, I'll have a link and a discount.
I mean, yeah, I'd like to, but that's the thing. Like, if you have to explicitly say that this is in fact my personal information, I'd like to believe that since you're paying them, they do it with good faith. They don't sell it to data brokers for even more profit. But again, unless I can confirm that, I can't just walk in there and be like, I can't myself. Obviously, I've never used it myself, but if I were to get sponsored by one of these sites, I'd be like, do I have to explicitly tell you it is in fact my information, or that I just want you to get rid of it? And if they're like, yes, you have to tell us it's your information, it's like, where does it explicitly say that you will not turn around and sell it to data brokers anyways and make even more profit?
Code down below. Let's get back to the video. Okay, here's the deal. This dude has a ton of war stories. We are just going to speed run the early life portion of this video. Our story begins on August 25th, 1919, when Matt Urban is born in Buffalo, New York. He is the youngest brother, and all of his brothers are track stars. One of his older brothers actually goes...
Let me just confirm. I think it said 1910s, right?
Of this video. Our story begins on August 25th, 1919,
when
Matt Urban is born in Buffalo, New York.
That's what I thought.
He is the youngest brother, and all of his brothers are track stars. One of his older brothers actually goes on to be an Olympic qualifier that competes against Jesse Owens. Other than being track stars, pretty normal childhood. Dad's a plumber, mom's a stay-at-home.
Because that is a rarity, like, even to be an Olympic contender, so to be talking about, to be talking about someone who, well, I guess in this case had a family member who was an Olympic contender, even then it's still very rare to come across like a biography about someone with like already something that notable happening, regardless of who that person ends up becoming in the future.
Mom grew up in the 1920s, 1930s. They all have the same childhood. We've heard this story 15 times. We're not going to rehash it. Fast forward, Matt Urban goes to Cornell University. He's running on the cross-country team, and he's working 5 part-time jobs to pay for tuition. Apparently, he wasn't busy enough, so he decides to go out for the boxing team as well, and due to his outstanding endurance from being a track star, and as well as just being a natural athlete, he excels at boxing. He's able to box equally as good, conventional and southpaw, and he rapidly becomes known as the one-man boxing team because he competes for Cornell at 165 pounds, 175 pounds, and heavyweight. He's so good that to get him to compete at heavyweight, they had to stick lead weights inside of his trunks.
I'm like, how does that work? Because obviously he's so good he can take on the bigger guys, but at the end of the day, there's rules and regulations to this thing. This isn't like some street fight where you stumble across a guy who's like, 50 pounds heavier than you, but you're good enough to like just knock him out anyways. No, this is like a regulated sporting event, so I'm not even sure how they got him to compete in heavier or lighter weight classes than he was qualified technically for, regardless of skill. But I guess maybe it's just they're a little loose with it, at least at this time, being like, well, he's skilled enough to take on the bigger guys, so we'll just let him into that anyways, because obviously I can't imagine someone that skilled would be let into a lighter weight class than he's actually qualified for, because he'd just absolutely body the less skilled guys who aren't even his weight.
So that he would make weight. Despite that, he becomes a champion in all 3 weight classes.
Or maybe he just like, you know, for like like the first quarter of the year, he fights in one weight class. The second quarter of the year, he gains or loses or whatever the case may be weight and competes in that weight class and so on and so forth. I don't know.
His junior year of college, it becomes pretty obvious that America at some point is going to be entering World War II, and he's going to get drafted, so he figures, hell, I'm just going to go ahead and join the ROTC program right now and start training, so that's exactly what he does. He then goes on to graduate.
So, ROTC, I assume, has to do with college officers rather than just going to a military academy. So I assume he's like, well, I'm going to college. I'm probably going to be drafted anyways. Might as well go into like, you know, college training, like college complacent training to become an officer immediately. Because he's already going to college. It's not like he's some guy who just graduated high school. It's like, I'm going to get drafted anyways. So I'm just going to become like a private for like, you know, 3, 4, however many years. He's already going to college, so he might as well join the college, like officer school.
College in 1941, immediately gets commissioned as an officer.
He graduated.
So that's exactly what he does. He then goes on to graduate college in 1941.
So he graduated in 1941, so therefore he is qualified to become an officer now since he's a college graduate.
He gets commissioned as an officer in the United States Army, becoming an infantry officer in the 9th Infantry Division, stationed at Fort Bragg. From here, pretty standard stuff. He's a platoon leader, training up his infantry guys, getting ready for the war that they know is coming, but Matt's a workaholic, so he also volunteers to be the regiment's morale officer, where he goes and starts a basketball team and a boxing team for the 9th Infantry Division. And from here, that's what he's doing. For months, he's doing infantry.
I mean, I obviously understand about boxing. I assume basketball because it's popular and it's a team sport as well, and you're not as likely to get absolutely pummeled. Of course, I'm sure military boxing would have more stringent regulations to make sure, you know, the military, these men can still fight if the need arises, but yeah.
Training during the day, he's being a boxing coach at night, and this just keeps going on and on and on with no break in sight. And then finally, in December of 1941, he finally gets a weekend pass. So obviously, he goes out to the...
Wait, December 1941 was a weekend to pass, and not Pearl Harbor, at least not yet, because, well, spoiler alert, it was. I'm assuming this is like December 5th.
The bar on December 7th, 1941.
Oh.
As soon as he gets in there, he gets halfway through his beer, sitting on a bar stool at the bar, and the radio cuts in with an urgent announcement. The bar gets quiet, the bartender turns up the radio, and that's when Matt hears that America has been attacked by Japan at Pearl Harbor, crippling our Pacific fleet.
So that begs the question, if you're on leave, because obviously if you're on, like, you get leave during active war, I believe. Aside from just being, you know, just standard battle fatigue and all that, you know, like being wounded obviously gives you de facto leave since you're on paper, at least, incapable to fight and you need to heal from those injuries. But I wonder if like because this is more like a kind of more relaxed vacation-esque leave, so I wonder if he still can, you know, finish his leave, or if he's immediately called up to the front because we just got into a war. And it's like, we got into a war while you were on leave. We got to cut your leave short. So get back to the front and or get back to your base, whatever, and we'll tell you if you're going to the front.
Killing thousands of Americans. All weekend passes are revoked and all troops are ordered back.
Okay, so weekend passes were revoked, or, well, I assume that also goes with general leave passes or more different leave passes. And they're like, well, no one can be on leave anymore. We're in war now.
Outfits. From here, obviously, training ramps up as they get ready to go off to war. Fast forward almost a year of training later, it is October of 1942 when the 60th Infantry Division, including Matt Urban, get told, load up on the boat. And they're like, where are we going? And they're like,
None of your
get
business.
your ass on the boat. So they load up on the USS Florence Nightingale and they set sail. Wherever they're going is apparently so secretive that they're not going to tell them until they get there. Now, on one hand, that's great for OPSEC, operational security. You don't want to be telling the whole world where you're going to be going and launching a major attack in World War II. But on the other hand, it's pretty demoralizing for a military, especially.
Also, keep in mind, like, when you have these many men to lead, or these many men in any circumstance, not everyone's going to be able to keep their mouth shut, even if they know, like, subconsciously they really should. Like, even the most loyal of men, or at least some of the most loyal of men, just won't be able to keep their mouth shut because, some people are a little more talkative than others, things like that. So it's only best for like the upper echelon of the military to know. And even as an officer, it's like you're probably not going to be in the know because you're too low rank of an officer, which he's like pretty much, I assume, like the first, like the most junior rank of officer, since he only completed officer training, like, well, I say training, he only graduated college months before.
Actually, one that has a significant amount of people that were drafted and didn't volunteer to be there. The entire notion of
I have, in fact, researched, enlisted and officer ranks and what it takes to become all the, to some degree. Can't remember it. I'm not also, grain of salt and all that because I'm not in the military. I've never been in the military and all that. So, kind of grain of salt, but from my understanding, I'm just saying what I'm saying from my understanding.
Your ass on the boat, we're going to ship you off to war and we're not even going to tell you where. Kind of a mentally draining type of a thing. Because of this, understandably, morale on the USS Florence Nightingale, pretty low. Everybody's kind of in a bad mood. There's this rift happening between the officers and the enlisted. The enlisted guys are coming to resent the officers because we're all going off to war together and you guys aren't telling us what we're actually doing. Fuck you guys. So Matt Urban steps up. He's the morale officer, right? It's his job to keep morale high. He's got to give these guys...
I get that. Like, obviously, the enlisted men who don't have as broad of a picture are going to be like, we want answers. Like, we're part of this thing too. And the officers are like, shut up and don't ask questions. We got to keep this as secretive as possible. So, if things go a certain way, it doesn't get divulged what we're up to.
Something to focus on besides the fact that we're going off to war in places unknown. So he heads off to the supply room, grabs some rope and some duct tape. He ends up marking off a 20-foot by 20-foot section right there on the deck of the USS Florence Nightingale and making a boxing ring. He then proceeds to walk away, goes up the stairs. He's standing on the deck on the control tower and just watches and waits. And sure enough, within 15 minutes, a crowd has amassed and people are having boxing matches right there on the deck of the Florence Nightingale.
Okay.
Everybody's laughing, they're gambling, they're having a good time. His plan worked great. This is a humongous boost to morale. Then things go a little bit sideways because the next natural progression happens. Everybody wants to know who's the best at boxing. So then it turns into, we're going to have boxing matches, and if you win, you stay inside the boxing ring. They're having 3 matches. Guys.
That's got to be kind of exhausting after a while. Like, even the best guy is going to eventually kind of start faltering due to exhaustion. And, it's like one thing if you're like, okay, we're going to do some boxing matches and, like, guys can rest like guys can rest at their own volition and they'll come back and they'll fight the other guys, and the champions don't have to stay in the ring like the whole time while we're sorting out the boxing matches, giving people time to rest, because even the most even the best guys are going to eventually tire out.
Are getting rotated in and out as they win or lose, and then eventually this one guy comes in, one big dude named Al Shellbach. Apparently he was a professional heavyweight boxer, and he proceeds to get in the ring and nobody's able to get him out. He's knocking out absolutely everybody.
I have worries for it's on YouTube, so it should be fine.
At which point it turns into everybody's going to pitch in money, and whoever can actually knock Al Shellbach out of the...
I'm like, maybe some violence things, especially for YouTube, but it's like, it's on YouTube, so maybe it's fine. Twitch, I'm not so worried about it, even though I am concerned. But the whole like, that B-roll clip of violence, I'm like, maybe not
is going to get
such
this
a good
huge
idea.
pot of cash. People try. Nobody can do it. He knocks out absolutely everybody, and it gets to the point that he's run out of people volunteering to get in that ring to box him, at which point he starts yelling and boasting. He's pretty upset that he's on this ship, doesn't want to be going off to war, so he starts talking shit to the officers, yelling to the crowd that is amassed around him, saying he wants to fight an officer now. At which point Matt Urban is sitting up on this balcony like, ah, shit, this might have been a bad idea. At which point Al Shellbach looks up.
I mean, he's also a boxer himself, and apparently a very good one. So,
at the balcony, makes direct eye contact.
Put him in his place, probably.
With Matt Urban, and then proceeds to say, and I quote, "Hey you, punk lieutenant, yeah, in the peanut gallery, I dare you. Show us how gutless you officer."
Okay, so I assume he's the lowest rank of officer, so if he's a lieutenant, I would make lieutenant's lowest rank. I'm trying to think. I think major might be higher. I think major's pretty low too.
Yep, this is a mistake. Matt Urban has just backed himself into a corner because on one hand, this is the 1940s. Officers and enlisted are not supposed to be commingling or intermingling. He can't go in there as a officer and a gentleman and box an enlisted soldier because that would, be against their code of ethics and the standards and blah, 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 blah. But on the other hand, if he doesn't do it, just being a man, like, how are you going to lead these men into combat if you're not willing to go down there and show them that you also know how to fight? So
I mean, to be fair, you could, spin it as you're putting an enlisted man in his place rather than to show that you're not afraid, blah blah blah, rather than like this being a proper intermingling session. Like, you could probably try to spin it that way.
This predicament, and he's like, fuck it, I'm gonna go down there. He starts walking down from the balcony. As he's coming down the stairs, he's taking his top off shirtless, and the crowd is going fucking nuts because Al Shellbach is about to knock out a lieutenant. What they don't know is that Matt Urban is also a heavyweight boxing champion, so they go in there and have this 3-round fight, and they beat the shit out of each other the entire time, but nobody gets knocked out, and it gets ruled a draw. At which point, Al Shellbach gives him a big hug. They raise each other's hands, tells him he's not like all the other officers. He is now a hero among all of the enlisted men.
And that's another thing, is this is a sign of a good leader. He's going, I guess you could argue it's respecting his men. And again, from a leadership standpoint, it's also, or from an officer standpoint, it's also showing that you are not in fact a coward, which, from a leadership standpoint is a major draw to the enlisted men. Because now they have more faith in you and all that.
And him and Al Shellbach just became homies forever.
Do you want to go do karate in the garage? Yup.
So this actually turned out pretty all right. Turned out pretty awesome. And then reality kicks in because...
And then the higher ranked officers come in and are like, why are you intermingling with the enlisted men? And like I said, argument for, well, he thought he could pull this. I had to show him that he couldn't.
The commanding officer yells down from the balcony that Urban needs to get his ass up here. Urban goes up there, then proceeds to get his ass chewed for boxing enlisted men, because that's not gentlemanly. He then proceeds to put both Urban and Shellbach on kitchen duty together for the rest of their trip. So they're potatoes together, cooking food.
Sounds like a great plan. The guy who you just boxed and became best friends with, you know what we're going to do? We're going to put you two together. That will show you the punishment. It's like, obviously, yeah, being on kitchen duty, probably not where you want to be per se, but especially when you're not, an assigned kitchen, like cook or something. But putting it to, assigning it with like someone you actually like as a punishment really isn't as much of a punishment.
the next couple of weeks, just hanging out pretty much all day. They become even better buddies. And then about 2-3 weeks in, early November, they have an officers meeting. Al Shellbach sneaks in with Urban, not a big deal. And they're sitting in this meeting and they basically break it down like, okay, we're off the coast of North Africa. This is Operation Torch. This is America's main invasion into North Africa. And the 9th Infantry Division is tasked with taking over Port Lyautey, which is being guarded by a old French fort.
Also, I mean, I'm not sure if it's because of the punishment or not, but he's an officer, so if there's an officer meeting where, you know, where these are like the main positions of leadership, of course it depends on like size and all that, and there's obviously superior and junior officers and all that. But if all the officers are to be briefed, then why would he have to sneak in? Unless he meant he used his authority to sneak in his friend Shellbacher or something like that. But he was invited regardless, or had to come regardless.
Known as Kasaba, they need to make a landing on the beach and go take that fort to take over this port. And if that wasn't hard enough, that fort is occupied by the French Foreign Legion, and I know what you're thinking, isn't France on America's side? Kind of, sort of, not really at this point, because...
It's complicated. It's complicated. Certain mustache man is kind of occupying it at the moment, so, you know, well, technically not. You know, you got, you know, France proper, which officially is German. You got Vichy France, which officially isn't, but still, in all reality, in practicality, is. So, in reality, not really.
Legion has taken orders from Vichy France, which is occupied by the Germans, so the Americans are going to be fighting the French, and the French Foreign Legion at this point, and really at all points, including modern time, it's kind of a legendary military unit.
Let's just start with the French Foreign Legion. They are tough, they are hard, and they are willing to die rather than surrender.
And Matt Urban's platoon is slotted in the...
Now, if you have French loyalists in the French Foreign Legion, that could be a problem for Germany. Because obviously, French patriots aren't loyal to the mustache man, and therefore would have no motivation to actually, you know, fight and die and for their honor or something like that in this scenario. Because again, they're fighting people. They would be in that case fighting in like viciously against people they actually prefer. I would imagine. I would imagine that Germany would stack the French Foreign Legion with soldiers that were loyal to the Germans, rather than, you know, because this isn't like a sports team thing where it's like, oh yeah, we're just have sporting fun together. Where it's like, yeah, my two friends get drafted to different teams and they have to go up against each other in sportsmanly fun. You know, this is like a life or death situation where you really are loyal or you're not.
First wave to hit the beach, Matt Urban's heart jumps. He's absolutely pumped, and as soon as he gets that adrenaline hit, the commanding officer looks at Matt Urban and says, but not you, because you're the morale officer. Remember, we're going to need you for after the battle to boost everybody's morale. You're keeping your ass right here on the ship, and so's your potato peeling buddy. At which point, Urban and Shellbach look at each other and telepathically communicate, that's not fucking happening.
Nah.
I understand that. You're being very serious right now.
I can clearly see you winking.
That night, Shellbach and Urban go. They get a life raft. They get their guns. They get ammo. They get grenades. They get everything they need to get off to...
Now I see. So they did go in with a life raft specifically. And I do see why they did it.
Battle, they get them in the life raft, throw it over the side of the ship, tie it off, get a rope ready to rappel down. They are going to go join this battle by themselves if they have to.
Okay.
The next morning, Operation Torch gets underway. They initiate the amphibious landing. The Higgins boats are making their way towards the beach. And
I mean, you could also take advantage of this opportunity because the Higgins boats are powered. A life raft isn't. By the time you reach shore, there's already going to be fighting going on. You could take advantage of like circling around, catching the French off guard, you know, or well, I say the French, like I said, not technically the French, but well, I wouldn't assume they were proper French, but you know.
Out of the gate, it is an enormous shit show. The enemy is somehow using artillery accurately, very accurately, too accurately for what is supposed to be happening. And the casualty reports just keep coming in, and they are horrific. At which point, Urban and Shellbach look at each other, they nod, they slip out, and they start lowering themselves down into this life raft. They get into this life raft, they start rowing their asses off. The commanding officer runs down to the deck and is screaming at Matt Urban, "Where the fuck are you going? Get your ass back here." And Matt Urban's just like, "Nope," and they just keep running right into the gunfire and artillery fire and explosions headed towards the beach. The closer they get to the beach, the more horrific a sight they see. There's just more and more dead bodies floating in the water. There's guys that drowned because the Higgins boats opened their doors too soon and they went in with full kit and didn't make it. There's guys that got shot, blown up.
That's another thing. Like, these men, like a lot of men who drowned in these amphibious landings that, you know, they could have been good swimmers, but when you're fully kitted up, you got, first of all, your clothes dry aren't going to be much a problem. But then when they get wet, they start, you know, they get waterlogged and start dragging you down, combined with, you know, other kit gear like any radio equipment, you know, ammo, extra ammo on your gun itself. That's going to weigh you down. If that gun's strapped to you, you can't just toss it aside and, you know, get a new gun from a dead comrade on the beach. So yeah, like so even good swimmers would probably drown in that situation. So I wouldn't be surprised if a good number of those troops actually could, in theory, swim to shore, but just didn't because, again, that, you know, however many dozens of pounds of extra weight weighed them down too much.
It's horrific. They managed to rescue a couple of guys that were stranded out in the water, and while this is happening, unbeknownst to them, the Americans had figured out why the artillery fire was so accurate, and it's because Vichy French had a bunch of guys up inside of a lighthouse overlooking the beach, and were using that as a vantage point to call in accurate artillery fire. Fortunately for Matt Urban, and unfortunately for everybody in that lighthouse,
that will put a damper on the whole, you know, inaccuracy situation you were hoping for. I assume that someone now has to be assigned to go take that lighthouse to, you know, everyone can actually land without dying.
Americans figured out that that's where the forward observers are. They radioed over to the most gangster battleship of all time, the USS Texas, which was also right there, and told them to delete that fucking lighthouse, which they did. Okay, that's life. 1 second, you're
okay. So it's the Texas. Yeah, what's up?
French, you're fancy, you're in a lighthouse, you're eating a baguette with your homies, it's romantic, you're calling in artillery.
It's romantic. It's just like the whole like French and romance or Paris romance stuff. They're like, yes, I'm hanging out with my buds and, you know, we're just having the most romantic time of our lives, like totally straight, but not really.
Fire on the invading American swine, and then the USS Texas just starts lobbing 1,500-pound freedom suppositories at your structure, and then you wake up dead.
How the hell do you wake up dead? Because you're alive when you go to sleep.
Matt finally makes it to the beach. All the men...
You wake up dead if there is a heaven, you know? If there's heaven to wake up in, I guess you wake up dead.
Have already advanced like 100 yards further. He's running, trying to catch up to him. He's dodging gunfire. There's bullets whizzing past him. He gets about halfway there and he sees that there's some private laying down inside of a crater, huddled up, not knowing what the fuck to do. He dives into this crater. This kid's freaked out, doesn't know what the fuck to do. He's having a panic attack. It's Private First Class Grabski. It's a kid from his platoon. He grabs him, get the fuck up and let's go, and they continue to advance towards the objective. He almost makes it to the spot where the men are pinned down in front of him, and then a humongous artillery explosion happens right in front of him where those men were. He dives to the ground with the private, and rolling up next to him comes a human head.
Ooh.
Worse than that, it's an American human head, and it's a human head of somebody that he recognizes, Lieutenant Goodwin, one of the other lieutenants from one of the other platoons in the 60th Infantry Regiment. And for a brief moment, Matt Urban gets extremely upset, and that rapidly turns into anger and adrenaline, at which point he stands to his feet with zero regard for himself and rushes towards the enemy bunker that is pinning down the men in front of him. He hurtles over his men hiding for cover straight towards this bunker, and before they can shoot him down, he throws a grenade into this pillbox, blows it up, and then clears it with his rifle. And
That is impressive.
As the men behind him start to stand up, realizing, oh shit, we're rushing the position, he immediately advances to the next pillbox and clears it as well, completely by
Again, this is very impressive. Just going for it, throwing it, like you're just, on an adrenaline rush, probably not really as focused as you probably should be, and you're still able to like just throw the grenade right where it needs to be. No shooting required whatsoever. Just go in, check for any other enemies, do some shooting, and we're all good.
himself. Seeing this, the rest of the men jump into action, and the American forces manage to clear out all of the pillboxes and trenches surrounding this French Fort Casaba. Now the Americans basically have this fort surrounded. There's no way that they can break in. They don't have tanks. They don't have any heavy artillery yet. All they have is small arms and grenades, and this French fort has these massive doors, humongous thick stone walls. They have no way to break in there to fight them. And from here, it turns into like a pitched siege warfare for the next 3 days. The French will open the doors, try to launch a counterattack. The Americans mow them down, and they're just kind of stuck there waiting for one side to give up. And in between these counterattacks, there's just these huge lulls. And by the end of the first day, Matt Urban remembers sitting down inside of a trench, watching the sunset, thinking to himself, this place is beautiful. This is not somewhere where you're supposed to be fighting a war. Next day, same thing.
I mean,
battle. There's
I feel like that goes for pretty much all of Earth, but I mean, the sad reality is war does get fought.
Attacks here and there, but between there's just hours of these huge lulls where everybody's kind of sitting around, eating food, doing nothing. Eventually, the French launch a massive counterattack as the doors to the fortress open and 3 French tanks roll out and immediately get blown up with bazookas. They immediately shut the doors again, and now everybody's just kind of sitting there in a lull. By the third day, they're having logistical issues. They're not getting enough food and water to the front to feed the men. Everybody's getting hungry. They're getting thirsty. They want to end this shit, and they want to end it now. And there's not really a great tactful way to go about that, so they're going to rely on good old-fashioned brute force and ignorance to get it done.
It's good old-fashioned blunt force trauma. Yeah. Let's start building some hurting bombs.
They grab all the bazookas and bazooka shells that they have. They send a group around to the rear gate. They're at the front gate, and they coordinate a time, and they just start shooting fucking bazookas at the gates until they break them off their fucking hinges and swarm the entire fort.
Okay. Let's get into it.
Matt Urban and the 9th Infantry Division's next battle takes place in Tunisia, where Erwin Rommel, the legendary German tank commander, and his famed Panzer Division, supposedly going
to be fighting the infamous commander, well, or whatever. Probably, obviously not directly, but still.
The most experienced military unit on the planet at this point in time are charging towards Allied forces. The best place to do that is going to be in a 2-mile gap in the Atlas mountain chain known as the Kasserine Pass. If they can hold him in this 2-mile gap in this narrow choke point, they might be able to stop him. The problem is the 9th Infantry Division is over 700 miles away, and Erwin Rommel is beelining it straight towards them. So in a hurry, they pack their shit up. 411 vehicles and artillery pieces and 2,000 men travel 777 miles in 3 days. 777 miles isn't that far to travel in 3 days. Yeah, if we're talking about you hopping on the interstate in your car, sure, but this isn't what we're talking about. We're talking about being in the desert of North Africa. There's no gas stations. They got to bring all their own food, all their own water, figure out how to get...
Yeah, they need their own supply line, which is a lot more difficult to travel that fast when you're doing that much.
Enough gas. They got to figure out how to move 2,000 dudes with 400 vehicles, 777 miles through the desert of North Africa in 3 days. Okay, yes, it's impressive. They are traveling all day and all night for 3 days straight, and they make it to Kasserine Pass before Rommel and his division. Matt Urban and the 60th Infantry Regiment are held up at a smaller pass within the Kasserine Pass.
Yeah, and obviously it's important, like if there is an area that is not necessarily kept by one side or the other, it is important that your side gets there, like basically a reinforced area, or an area that is crucial for defense, because defense, I believe, is easier than offense, because defense just have to sit there and repel attacks, where offense you have to actually try to push defense out of a static position while you're in a moving one, so it's a lot easier to defend something than it is to offend something. So getting to a position first is definitely of utmost importance for that very fact.
pass known as McNassie Pass, and it is just wide enough for a single tank to get through. Literally one road with cliffs on either side. They get their 155mm howitzers leveled in a crossfire right at the pass, and as soon as a German Panzer tank comes rolling through, they blow that thing up. They blow the tank up right behind it.
Also, those being able to blow up enemy tanks going through a pass especially is also very beneficial because now it backs up everything. Enemy infantry can't get through as easily, all that. So it's definitely good that they were able to get there first and do that kind of damage
Completely blocking the pass.
immediately.
Now nothing can get through. Then there's kind of a lull in the battle. Matt Urban's up at a vantage point.
Obviously.
Trying to
But honestly, that lull is going to be, I think it's going to be very crucial because now it allows you to build up a better advantage. Because keep in mind, they're in an advantageous spot right now. Now the Germans have to figure out a way to circumvent the blockage. While the Americans and any other allies could just sit there waiting for them to do that. Meanwhile, maybe getting reinforcements, maybe getting some planes in the sky to help do even more damage to the enemy. The Americans are very much in an advantageous spot.
See what's going on, and after a couple of hours, he sees what appears to be a sandstorm approaching his direction from where the Nazis are.
Okay.
As it gets closer, he realizes that's not a sandstorm. The Nazis are bringing in their heavy artillery, 240mm cannons. At which point, Urban's artillery guy informs him those guns have like twice the range of anything we've got. They're going to be able to hit us way before we're going to be able to hit them. Now some of the men are kind of shitting themselves because this is, for all intents and purposes, the first big clash between the Nazis and the American forces. And it's Erwin Rommel's famous Panzer Division. The Germans have better machine guns that don't jam. Their grenades are more dangerous. Their tanks are better. Their artillery's better. It's not looking good. Despite that, Matt Urban tells his guys to calm down, dig in, we're fighting them right here. And within the hour, they start getting hit by German heavy artillery. They weather the storm. The Germans launch an attack. They repel the attack. They start hammering them with artillery again. The Germans launch another attack. They repel the attack. And this goes on for the next 72 hours straight. Matt Urban said that there wasn't a single second over the course of the next 3
That is a slog right there.
days where there wasn't a shell inbound, and he was legitimately concerned that he or one of his men was going to suffocate from all of the dust that was being kicked up. They couldn't see shit. Despite that, they held the pass for 72 hours straight, and then it just stopped. Eerie silence and just the
I assume the supply line finally ran dry.
ringing of the
That would be the best guess. Or the Allies managed to get around or something like that.
that they all now have. Matt Urban climbs up to a vantage point with his binoculars and sees the Germans are retreating. Rommel has exhausted his ammunition and supplies and is forced to retreat. Okay, it's been like 3 straight days. The boys were hungry, they're tired, so Matt picks out a couple of people to set up guard and watch, and everybody else is just supposed to grab some food, eat, and take a nap. Matt Urban gets that going. He finally goes, gets some food for himself, sits down, starts opening.
I assume it's on rotation too. Like, you'll say on guard duty while these guys get to eat, then these guys will in sleep for that matter. And then there's like another rotation that will take those guards' positions so they could go eat and rest and so on and so forth.
Up a can of sea rations when one of the guards comes running up that there's a raiding party headed their direction from behind them.
Son of a bitch.
Okay, now he's pissed. At this point, the Germans are just trying to starve him to death before they can actually shoot him. He grabs a rifle platoon, heads off to investigate. He gets over to where the supposed German raiding party is, and what he finds is a bunch of dudes in robes with Aladdin swords and like old World War I rifles looting one of his supply drops. His rifle platoon immediately opens fire, shooting some of them. The rest scatter off into the tall grass. They all disappear. Matt orders his...
I assume those are like locals, because if they've got like the older, those Arabian style whatever swords, they're in robes and stuff. They're clearly not military units, at least not Western military units.
Not to pursue them. They're clearly not a legitimate threat. It's turning into a long day. He's got the Germans trying to kill him over here. The Tuscan Raiders are behind him trying to steal all of his shit. He just wants to eat his food. He goes back. He eats some food. A couple hours later, he gets woken up by a guard again. Sir, there's a civilian approaching from behind us. And Matt's like, oh, okay. fine. He goes out, he meets with the civilian. It's somebody that can kind of speak broken English. Basically, the village that the people that just raided a supply depot are from, some of them got shot and they want medical aid. Okay, and just like so we're all on the same page, in World War II, this is not a normal thing. This is not like Iraq, Afghanistan, where we're an occupying force. We're trying to win over hearts and mind and go hand out the kids candy and medical aid and all kinds of shit. Like, this is not a standard thing to have happen, which is
Right. Just get in, get the occupiers out, and get out.
why none of Matt Urban's guys want to do this, because they think it's a trap, because obviously. Despite
Right.
that, Matt Urban decides they're going to go do it. So he grabs some medics, grabs a rifle platoon. They
Okay, if you want to go do it though, you have to be very cautious. I can't just go in, oh yeah, we got no guns, nothing like that. By the way, we can trust you, right? It's like, yeah, you can trust us. It's not like we have any ulterior motives.
head off to this village and they patch up everybody that they can that got shot. Get that done, head back to the pass where their base is, and they're there for about an hour, and then the guard comes running up again. Sir, there's another civilian approaching. They go out there, and it is just this one singular Jeep hauling ass straight towards them. Matt grabs a bunch of guys with guns, tells them to hide in the tall grass, be ready for anything. He's got 2 guards with him. He's standing in the middle of the road as this Jeep comes screaming up. As it approaches, he sees what appears to be like a sultan, like a king. The dude's got all the fancy robes on. He's
Right.
got this big ass
Right.
gold chain with a massive gold pendant, and the Jeep rolls up and stops, and in broken English asks who's in charge. At this point, Matt's thinking, okay, this is somebody important. This is like the king or something, and I've just committed an international incident. So he's like, I'm in charge, sir, Lieutenant Urban. The Sultan dude then gets this big, enormous smile showing off his gold teeth and says, and I quote, "Thank you, you killed a bad man. Thieves no good." The Jeep then does a big U-turn and drives off the other direction where they came from. All of his guys come out of the tall grass laughing and joking, imitating the Sultan dude. And Matt Urban's just standing there like, what the fuck is happening right now? This is the weirdest day ever. I'm going to bed.
I mean, respect. It's like, I'm some other region. I'm sure he was more of a regional leader or something, maybe. And he's just like, yeah, we don't like him either. You didn't cause any international incident. We all good. Like, and that's another thing. You have to remember, this isn't modern day, right? Like, the idea of foreign actors crossing in, killing people, that offing people, censorship, that, aren't exactly good people, who the natives, like the locals, don't want there either. Like, back then, that wasn't so much of a problem. Like, today, with like international border security and all that on a modern platform, and humanitarian stuff that we got nowadays, it's like that would definitely be an incident. But back then, it's like we didn't like him either, so we're not going to really make a fuss about it.
Urban and the rest of the 9th Infantry Division are headed further into Tunisia, and while they're making their way there, they come across a clan of Gomieres. Now, Gomieres, from what I understand, is Arabic for the phrase irregular soldier. Basically, they're bad.
Probably not that direct, but I'm sure it's the closest.
Ass guerrilla fighters that are very reminiscent of Gurkhas. They're known for carrying big ass scary blades, and they're known for having the same exact legend that Gurkhas have, that if they draw their blade, they have to draw blood. So if there's no enemy to kill, they'll cut their finger, because it's just like part of the superstition. Every time you draw your weapon, it has to draw blood. They're Moroccans that are working for the French and usually only carry blades into combat. And the Germans are kind of terrified of them, because they're renowned for sneaking into German camps at night, slitting a bunch of people's throats, and overall just committing a bunch of heinous war crimes.
I mean, they were stark, raving, mad, crazy, nuts. Didn't have no guns, but boy, they had the knives. And when they first went in, they paid them by the ear, 2 cents an ear.
But hey, they're on our side, so Matt Urban wants to go say hi. He figures they've been operating in this area, maybe they know something that he doesn't. So he goes up to him, finds one that kind of speaks broken English, and just kind of asks him, like, Germans? And the guy just like frantically nods his head yes, and he goes, where? How many? And the guy just says, come.
Hey, Jim.
Not now, Toby, my God.
Okay.
Get the hell out of here, idiot.
And he takes off, so Matt Urban follows him by himself. And Matt Urban is struggling to keep up, which is impressive, because Matt Urban is a track star, and this Gommier is just sprinting through this rugged, mountainous terrain without making a single sound. And this goes on for miles, and then finally the Gommier just stops, and Matt Urban's like, catches up to the guy, and he's like, what's going on? And the guy just points, and off in the distance, there's a 8x12 cement building out in the middle of the desert. And Matt Urban is like, what the fuck is that? And turns around to talk to the Gomier, and the guy's just gone.
Okay. Does he at least know how to get back? Because, I mean, clearly the Gomier, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, does. I'm not sure if he does. I'm not sure how well he was paying attention to the surroundings while chasing after this guy.
So Matt Urban turns his attention back to the cement building out in the middle of nowhere, and he just like kind of watches it for a little while, and then he sees that there's German patrols guarding it, so obviously it's something important. He better go investigate. So he starts low crawling, moving as little as possible, excruciatingly slow, covering ground. And as he gets closer and closer, he starts seeing all kinds of wires running into this cement building. And that's when he realizes, oh shit, this is Rommel's entire division's communications hub. He keeps working his way closer and closer to the building. And then eventually the sun's starting to go down, and the Germans that are on patrol all sit down and start eating their dinner.
I'm curious how big this building is. Because, yeah, division, I believe, is pretty big. So if this is like, no, could be just a simple hub, like a smaller divisional hub that doesn't have so many men, especially if it's only for communications. But it would be interesting to see how many men they actually have on it.
This is his chance. He sneaks up to the cement enclosure, pulls a pin on his grenade, opens the door, throws it inside, shuts the door, grenade explodes, pops back inside the door, shoots both the radio operators with his Colt 45, then throws another grenade right at the radio equipment and takes off fucking running. The Germans start chasing him. They're shooting at him. One of them throws one of their big-ass stick grenades near enough to him to knock him off of his feet, takes shrapnel in his right hand, hops back up, and keeps sprinting, says it's the fastest.
I mean, if it's only your hand, you can keep running, right?
He's ever run in his entire life. Makes it to within 100 yards of his own lines, and then his own guys start shooting at him with machine guns. He runs and dives into a depression and like has a white handkerchief and is like waving it over the top. And one of the guys that's shooting at him is like, who goes there? And he's like, it's Urban. Stop fucking shooting at me. So he makes it back to his lines, reports to his captain, explains to the captain what happened. And the captain is like, I don't know whether to court-martial you or give you a medal. The war is hard enough without you showing off constantly. You're fucking taking rowboats into amphibious landings. You're running off with Moroccan assassins to take out Rommel's communication centers by yourself. We're not going to talk about this. Go to the med tent, get your hand fixed.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Does that count as a Purple Heart? Because technically, it wasn't an official like operation, and I'm sure certain officers want to blow this under the rug. So if they give him a Purple Heart, that's going to acknowledge things, and because obviously it's a wound taken in combat. So like by default, like a de facto, I'd assume it would be a Purple Heart incident. But again, people are denied certain rewards because, secrets or, troubles that might pop up with acknowledgement of certain operations, like, a rogue soldier getting wounded in a battle they weren't even, or, well, operation battle, whatever you want to say, that they weren't even slated to be on. It's like, well, do we give him a Purple Heart? Because then we'd have to acknowledge that this actually happened, blah, blah, blah.
His guys continue further into Tunisia, heading north, and the terrain kind of shifts. It goes from, being a desert to being this, like, arid middle ground, and then it turns into this dense, arid forest type shit. It's just thick, dry brush everywhere. And in this new terrain, they come up to a mountain with a German stronghold on top that apparently has been fighting back the British for months. It's a steep terrain. There's brush everywhere. They've got machine gun emplacements up top inside of these stone bunkers. It's impenetrable.
I've had that before.
But hey, somebody's got to go up there and take it out. And the chain of command at the 9th Infantry Division is like, I've got just the guy. Matt Urban, you want to show off? Go get him. Matt Urban grabs his platoon and he decides that he's going to attack where the enemy's going to expect it the least. He's going to shuttle his men single file up the steepest part of this mountain. Matt Urban leads his platoon through all of this thick brush, single file, gets everybody as close as possible before the jungle starts to clear out. And once they get as close as that point, they have this stopping point. They downgrade all their equipment. They get rid of their canteens. They drop their packs. They fix bayonets on their rifles, and they start grabbing dirt, smearing it on their face. They're about to have a raiding party.
Yes. Bayonets. Still being used in World War II. I think there are probably some specialized operational forces that use them, at least train with them. Honestly, a bayonet would be good for hand or close quarters combat, especially on a rifle, since lugging that giant thing around up to your shoulder to fire would be kind of annoying in that kind of situation. And I'm sure soldiers are probably better trained to do that kind of thing than civilians, but still.
Start creeping up closer and closer on the German position, and when they get within eyesight, Matt Urban realizes they have no idea that they're coming. The Germans are all just sitting around goofing off. Perfect. They continue to creep forward. They get right up to this waist-high stone wall surrounding this little encampment of Germans in their fortified position, and Matt Urban pulls out his Colt 45 in one hand and a flare gun in the other.
Time to make the chimney
Okay.
fucking chongas.
Matt Urban pops up, shoots a flare directly into the machine gun emplacement that would open fire on his men, then reloads, shoots another flare into that machine gun emplacement, hops the wall with all of his men, and they charge. The Germans are caught completely off guard and have to retreat from their positions. They run, they occupy the bunkers with the machine guns, they turn the guns around and open fire on the fleeing Germans as they see off in the distance that the Germans have some captured Allied POWs that they begin executing. They then proceed to go capture those Germans and line them up to return the favor. The Nazi officer is then screaming,
It's like, I want to say some choice words, but I won't. I'll keep my thoughts to myself.
"You can't do this, it's against the Geneva Treaty," at which point he's basically told, "So was what you just did. I don't give a shit." They line the Germans up, point guns at him, and
Yep.
his men are just waiting for Matt to give the order. They want him to do it. Like, dude, give me the order. This is bullshit. They just killed a bunch of our guys. Let's return the favor. And Matt, he can't do it. They finish taking the position and escort the German prisoners back to headquarters. After this, they continue to advance further into Tunisia, and what's going on at this point during the campaign is the Allied forces have basically taken over the entire country, but the Germans are still held out on top of like hills and mountains in these super strong fortified positions, and the Allied forces have just kind of gone around them for now. They've taken over the whole country, and now it's time to double back and clear them out.
And this is really the thing. Like, sure, you've got the major points of interest occupied, but now that the enemy has, retreated and broken up, you got to deal with like some more, I guess for lack of a better term, is like guerrilla units that are just like kind of broken up, distant from any centralized command, that now you just have to go and stumble across basically. Because there's always going to be like, right after a war, there's always going to be like some people still, like some enemy forces still left that you have to clean up.
Urban's battalion has been tasked with going
even after an official surrender.
And taking out a fortified German position known as Hill 409. So Matt Urban's...
Which I know this isn't the Germans surrendering yet. This is just this country was taken from them. Or, well, it was taken from them taking it, but again, it's still the same logic, though. There's still broken up forces that you have to kind of just still deal with.
Unit, the 2nd Battalion of the 60th Infantry Regiment of the 9th Infantry Division, makes their way to Hill 409. Once they get fairly close, Matt Urban orders the rest of his men to rest. He grabs a couple of his best guys, and he goes up on a scouting mission to assess the situation. They get up there close enough, and Matt Urban realizes that there's an entire German regiment on top of Hill 409, which is about 2 to 3 times bigger than a battalion.
I like those odds.
Just so we're all on the same page and we know what that means, they are outnumbered at least 2 to 1. They'll be fighting uphill into fortified machine gun positions. Not looking that great, but also, Matt Urban's the main character and he's got plot armor, so we're gonna fucking run it. But he's gonna need a pretty good plan, so he stays there just watching what the Germans are up to, and he notices right around lunchtime at noon, all of the Germans leave their fortified machine gun positions, eat lunch, and then after lunch, a new group of Germans switch out and they go occupy the machine gun positions. That's the plan. They're going to rush those fortified machine gun positions right when they are unoccupied by the Germans, then they're going to spin them around.
Why? Okay, so obviously Germans eat lunch, blah, blah, blah. I get that. So why wouldn't they be like, okay, the reinforcements or the other party eats the lunch. Then when the new party comes out to swap, the other party is already eaten. They can swap in while the other party goes off to eat lunch and do their second half of the day tasks. Like, you're telling me they just completely left them completely unoccupied while they went to eat lunch. And like you didn't have, like an 11 o'clock to 12 o'clock block, or I don't know, 11:30 or maybe 12 to 12:30 block that then went at 12:30 to swap so that the other party could go eat lunch, get some R&R, something like that. I don't know what you'd do outside of that. They just left them completely open for the taking, basically.
Around and use their own fortifications against them and take the hill. And the very next day, that's exactly what happens. They mow down some of the Germans with their own machine guns, but the vast majority of them retreat and escape. And that's it. Main character, good plan, makes for an easy day for a minute, because about 15 minutes later, the Germans launched a massive counterattack, and now the entire battalion is in
you've got to be prepared for if they have a counterattack. I guess once you have the country itself, though, you're probably not so worried about the German occupation. I would imagine the German ability to occupy the regions they still do is very negligible.
German fortified position, and they are now surrounded by a force 2 to 3 times larger than them, and they're fucking stuck with no way to get more supplies. They managed to repel the first German counterattack, but like I said, they're still stuck. So they just kind of hang out there, and they repel another counterattack, and then night comes, and they repel another counterattack, and then the second day, they repel multiple more German counterattacks, and they're running out of food, water, and ammunition. By the end of the second day, things are not looking good. They are going to run out of ammo and all their other supplies. They're going to get overrun. Luckily, on the morning of the third day, they managed to get a bunch of supplies airdropped in right on top of the hill.
That's good.
To keep them in the fight, they fight the entire third day. On the morning of the fourth day, Matt Urban is woken up right at dawn as the sun is starting to illuminate the battlefield to all of his men running past him, retreating. Matt Urban jumps to his feet like, what the fuck is going on? Starts yelling at his dudes to hold their position, and then off in the distance, he hears in perfect English somebody yelling for retreat, so he takes off that direction. It's early morning, it's barely light out, it's super foggy up on this hill, he can barely see 6 feet in front of him. And he's just following the sound of this voice in perfect English yelling, retreat, we're being overrun. As he closes in on this voice calling for retreat, somehow in the fog, he had circled around behind this guy, and as he gets closer, he sees that it's a German uniform yelling in perfect English, ordering people to retreat, tricking the Americans.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
In perfect English? Like no German accent or anything?
Now you die.
Matt Urban runs up behind this guy, pulls out his trench knife, stabs him in the neck to shut him up immediately, and thinking fast, I don't know if it was luck or if he actually did this on purpose, but he grabs the German's burp gun and shoots the 2 guys that were with him. And the reason that this is genius is because it totally saves him and his men, because by using the German gun, which sounds significantly different than the American Thompson, the Germans know that, the Americans know that, it gives all of the Americans warning of like, hey, here's where the Germans are, they're coming from this direction. In addition to that, all the German forces behind him now think that he's German, so they're not going to open fire on him. Which really comes in handy as an entire German rifle squad comes running through the fog towards him, thinking that their buddy needs backup, and he turns the burp gun back around and lights them up too. Matt then runs back to his guys through the fog, gets everybody back into their fighting positions as they repel the Germans' last all-out counterattack where they threw everything they had at the Americans.
I'd like to see the consequences of that, because there had to be because obviously it was a trick. So now the military has to think about these tricks. Now the Americans, the allies, have to be like, what if they try this again? Like, what should the procedure be?
Americans. But because of Matt Urban's actions, they managed to hold out, and after that one single counterattack, they counted 116 dead Nazis on the hill. And that was it. The Germans continued retreating, they were gone, the hill is secured. For this battle, Matt Urban's battalion would receive a Distinguished Unit Citation, which is a huge deal, and shortly after that, the Tunisia campaign would come to an end, with Axis forces surrendering in the area on May 13th, 1943.
Not over yet. Going to Sicily this time.
From here, Matt Urban and his guys get some R&R, then they're told to board a boat to places unknown yet again.
Obviously, the war ain't over yet. I mean, Italy, I think, was easier than Germany because of, reasons. But, yeah, still not... It's still going to be a slog to get through, but not as bad as Germany.
They make their way there. They end up off the coast.
Because, that's the thing. Italy just has historically not been that great of a country, militarily speaking.
of Sicily off the city of Palermo. While there, his ship gets attacked by German Stuka dive bombers, and the first pass...
Oh, yeah, then it's possible that, because obviously Germans are allied with Mussolini, and Germany could just send reinforcements through there, so yeah, probably still going to be, you know what, I take it back, probably still going to be tough. I totally, or just as hard, I totally forgot that the Germans were a large part of the Italy campaign.
Ends up killing a guy on the anti-aircraft gun that is closest to Matt Urban. Matt Urban runs over, mans the anti-aircraft gun, and shoots down the next Stuka dive bomber that tries to make a pass at him. And then the attack's over, and he just goes about his business, just complete main character energy, like it was no big deal.
What a day!
What a day!
The next morning, they depart the ship, and they are essentially told, the enemy's that way. Go get them until you hit the ocean and we've taken over the entire island. No tanks, no vehicles, no nothing. Just walk your happy ass from one end of the island to the other and kill all the bad guys that you find. So they take off road marching. Matt Urban is at the front of his battalion with all of his men walking behind him on the road. Obviously, they're doing most of their road marching like early in the morning and kind of later in the day to avoid the heat. And that's when it gets kind of cold. So at some point, Matt Urban takes to having a wool blanket. He throws that over his helmet, over his shoulders like a cloak, and he's just leading his troops into battle. And the men start to joke that the entire 9th Infantry Division is being led by a ghost. And this is where the nickname Matt Urban, the Ghost, first originates. Matt Urban and the 9th Infantry Division have fought the French, they fought the Germans, and now they're fighting the Italians. Or at least they're trying to, because the Italians at this point in the war, they're not very well trained, they're not very well equipped, and they do not have...
That's basically post-Rome United Italy as a whole. Like, obviously the Roman Empire was able to be very competent in their ability to, you know, conquer and defend. But by the time Italy kind of, I guess you could say, reunites in the late 19th century, they're never going to see the military competency of the Roman Empire, or the Roman Republic for that matter.
Very high morale, so as soon as they see the Americans coming, every time they approach a village that has enemy soldiers in it, by the time they actually reach the village, the enemy soldiers have already packed their shit up and retreated. And this happens pretty much the entire time they're in Sicily. They walk from sea to shining sea and see almost no combat. After that, they're told to board a boat. They get shipped off to England to prepare for D-Day.
Okay, we still got D-Day to go.
Once they get over to England, there's a lot of R&R going on, there's a lot of training going on, but Matt Urban in particular resumes his role as the morale officer.
Oh yeah, it's because I knew there was a battle. I think it's Battle of Monte Cassino. That was kind of sort like one of the only like real, like, you know, difficult, I guess, battles to fight. Whereas most, like I said, Italian military has never really been anything to worry about. Like, they basically lost against Austria-Hungary in World War I. The only reason they won the war is because they were on the winning side till the bitter end. In Austria-Hungary, because of, you know, the ethnic and cultural and linguistic differences between the regions and their own individual nationalistic desires, they were not very loyal to Austria-Hungary, combined with the fact that you had Austrian, German-speaking nobility leading maybe Hungarian-speaking peasants. I'm not sure if they got off the feudal system, but I guess for lack of a better term, like, you know, peasants, you know, whatever you want to call them, serfs. I don't know. I don't know what their status was at that point, but yeah, you had these average men who weren't even loyal to the Austrian crown, and they still beat Italy, which was a unified nationalistic country at this point. So it's like, how do you lose to Italy?
And is told to organize a massive morale box.
Or, sorry, not lose to Italy, but it's like, how do you lose to Austria-Hungary? That's how bad Italy was in World War I. So the fact that World War II was no different doesn't really surprise me.
Event for the entire 7th Corps of the Army. They want it to be a big deal. They've got Joe Louis, the Brown Bomber, the world heavyweight boxing champion, coming through. He's going to be willing to box some of the soldiers. It's just supposed to be a big morale event. So he resumes his role as a boxing trainer. He's getting some dudes trained up, and then at night he's going out on the town having a good time. One night he goes out to a circus and he meets an attractive woman that he describes as a shapely brunette. Her name is Marie Brown, and he would later find out that she had won Miss England a couple years prior. They drink and hang out all night, and as the night comes to an end, Matt Urban decides to be a gentleman and make sure that she gets home okay, which he agreed to before he realizes that it was a 20-mile train ride to a different town, but he goes anyways. Gets her all the way home to the front doorstep.
Gotta go 20 miles there on a train, 20 miles back on a train, because you can't go AWOL like that for too long.
Gives her a kiss and then turns around to leave, at which point Miss England tells him, that was the last train for the night. There's not going to be another one till the morning. You're going to have to stay here. Darn it. At this point,
that's a shame.
He's thinking he's going to be sleeping on the couch, which is fine. No big deal. She
Right.
walks him upstairs to the guest bedroom, which is extremely nice in this very nice house. And he takes a bath, goes, lays down, and it's like the peak of luxury. Dude's been sleeping out in the fields in Africa and in Sicily. He just got to have a bath, and now he's sleeping in an actual bed. This is fantastic. Right as he's about to go asleep, Miss England comes and gets in bed with him. In Matt Urban's own words, and I quote,
I'm not sure about English culture, but I'm not even sure if at the time, because in American movies at this point, they didn't show anyone sleeping in the same bed together. And I'm not sure if in American culture, I'm not sure if in American culture, that makes me think like were actual married spouses in separate beds a lot too. Like to him would this be like an extreme culture shock? Like, man, the English couples sleep in the same bed.
I was a perfect gentleman, and each person will have to interpret that for themselves. All right,
Fair enough.
I'll interpret it. The next morning, Matt Urban wakes up to a knock on the door. He scrambles, starts getting his clothes on, like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. It's an angry husband. It's an angry father with a shotgun. Whatever's on the other side of that door is...
This is England, not America. There are no shotguns. No one's walking around with a shotgun like in America.
Not good. He runs over to the window, fully prepared to jump out of a second-story building. Another gorgeous woman walks through the door, and he's like, okay, it's her sister. It's cool. Everything's fine. And then Miss England on the bed says, good morning, Mom. He opens the window and starts putting one leg out, getting ready to jump.
Okay.
And him like he's crazy, and he now realizes that Mom has just brought them breakfast in bed. So from here, he finishes breakfast, heads back to base, and continues training.
Well, to be fair, in his head, he's like thinking, this isn't good. I'm a complete stranger. Mom's probably going to be mad, very, very mad. Like, again, I'm not sure about the cultural differences between America and England, but yeah, being an American, he had reason to be afraid.
Boxing and getting ready for this big boxing event. Now, the cool part about this boxing event, at least to me, is that it's for 7th Corps, and another member of 7th Corps is Lafayette Poole, aka War Daddy, the greatest American tanker of all time. This is the guy that the movie Fury is based on. I've already done a full video on him. In that video, I talk about how when he was in England, right around this time period, he had a boxing match with Joe Louis, aka the Brown Bomber, the world heavyweight champ. Now, I can't tell you with absolute 100% certainty. There could have been multiple events, but I think it's pretty likely that Matt Urban actually scheduled and organized the event where Lafayette Poole, War Daddy, boxed Joe Louis, which honestly has nothing to do with the overall story, but it is really cool to see my videos overlap, and just the idea that Matt Urban at some point was coaching Lafayette Poole at boxing is just awesome.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's a cool little tie-in, because, and that's another thing, like, the war had millions of men in each army. So the fact that two of these heroes, I guess you could say, came to most likely meet and, communicate over the course of days, weeks, months, however long. It's cool to see.
After the boxing morale event, they start training for an amphibious landing. Matt gets promoted to captain. He also gets caught up on awards. He gets awarded a Silver Star, Bronze Star with V device, Purple Hearts, all kinds of stuff.
Right.
From here, they get packed up and shipped off to Normandy, where they make their landing on Utah Beach. Just so we're on the same page, this is not like D-Day. They were not the initial wave of the attack on Normandy. That was on June 6th. They hit Utah Beach on June 11th, 5 days later.
Yeah,
so
that's
by the time they hit Utah Beach,
a
it's
lot
clear the fighting
longer.
has moved further inland.
I assume at this point, just catch up with the front. I can't imagine there's going to be too much fighting at this point, at least in this area.
Land on Utah Beach, and they actually have to follow like roped off sections where they've cleared small pathways through minefields and German objectives.
Oh yeah, I'm like roped off, and then I'm like, oh yeah, because minefields and stuff, and they got to make sure like that the reinforcements are following, the cleared areas, because if another landmine goes off, because these are reinforcements, they're not in active battle. So if a mine goes off, that's a reinforcement down, at least one down, that could have been used to help at the front.
Country, they get to the front lines and they start clearing fields, hedgerow after hedgerow, and eventually they come up against German resistance, and these Germans have 2 Panzer tanks and they don't have any tanks.
That's not good.
Despite that, Matt Urban and his guys
Not immediately
start fighting. They're picking off the German infantry that's trying to use the tanks as
obviously if you have certain anti-tank weapons, it's not the worst thing in the world. Just hunker down, pull out your anti-tank gun with your anti-tank ammo, shoot at it, and it's all good, hopefully. But if they don't even have that, yeah, it's going to be a tough battle.
cover, but the machine guns on top of the German tanks are wreaking havoc on his men. As the battle rages on, his men are starting to take casualties, and Matt Urban remembers he's the main character, and if anybody's gonna do some gangster shit, it's gonna have to be him. At which point, he goes to his men, grabs a bazooka, runs into enemy machine gun fire, and fires the bazooka at one of the tanks, scoring a direct hit, knocking it out. He then reloads the bazooka and fires it at the second tank, scoring another direct hit, knocking out 2 German Panzer tanks by himself in a matter of like a minute. And as soon as that second tank is hit, German reinforcements arrive with another Panzer tank that drives through one of the hedgerows, and it starts opening fire on Matt Urban's men again, so he starts reloading his bazooka as the German turret is moving towards him, and it stops right at him. Matt Urban has enough time
Not
to
a
think in his
good
head, "Oh, shit,"
time.
as he goes to throw the bazooka down to take cover, and before he can even let go of the bazooka, the gun fires, the round impacts immediately directly in front of his feet as he is yeeted into the hedgerow behind him. He comes to in the hedgerow right where he landed with medics working on him. He has a massive chunk of his calf missing as the medics are about to administer morphine, and they're trying to get other people to litter bear him back to the ship.
Here's your ninepence. I'm not dead. Yeah. He says he's not dead. Yes, he is.
Matt Urban then orders the medics to not give him morphine and just throw a tourniquet on it because he's fucking staying until they win. Right around then, the litter bearers show up as they're supposed to take him back to the hospital ship. Matt Urban climbs on the litter and then, rather than go back to the hospital ship, has them escort him around the battlefield, issuing orders to his men. And this goes on until they repel that wave of Germans and eventually...
He's like, man, I'm still alive. I'm the lieutenant here. You know, I'm going to, or no, he's a captain now. So he's leading an even bigger unit. I'm the captain here. So, you know, let's go. Move it. Get to work. You know, we're not going to let some lieutenant take my job.
The battalion surgeon, the head medic for the entire battalion, also an officer that outranks Captain Urban, has to go to Urban and order him to go to the aid station. So they get him back to the beach at a field hospital. 2 surgeons start working on him. They don't have any anesthesia. All he has is a local anesthetic. He is wide awake as 2 surgeons are cutting out necrotic tissue from what used to be his leg. The surgeons laugh. He's done his job as a morale officer. He's keeping morale high. Eventually, he asks the surgeons, okay, how much longer is this going to take so I can get back to my men? And the surgeons are like, dude, you might lose your entire leg. You're done here. You're not going back to the front.
It's like, that won't work. That ain't on my
Matt
game
Urban
plan.
gets sent back to a hospital in England. From here, he's in the hospital, he's recovering. It's looking like he's going to get to keep his leg, but it's still pretty jacked up. And then after a couple of weeks, more reports start coming in that the fighting in Normandy is intense, and his unit is taking a lot of casualties. About a week after that, some of those casualties start making it to the same hospital that Matt Urban's at, and on one hand, he's happy to see his guys, but on the other hand, he's getting reports of all the guys that also didn't make it, and
I'm sure he's not happy to see them in this condition, but I mean,
maybe they would have if he was there with them. And he decides
right.
he needs to go back. So he goes, he talks to the chain of command, he tells them he wants to go back, and they're like, no, absolutely.
So they're like, no, what, you're wounded. We ain't gonna let you back. Go back to your hospital bed. And I assume he's like, sure, right, hospital bed. And just hops on the next ship out to France.
Not. If that leg gets infected, you're going to lose it, and it's looking like you're going to keep it now. You're not going back into combat. But Matt Urban isn't taking no for an answer. His boys need him. He's got to figure out a way to get back to Normandy across the English Channel. So he's sitting outside this hospital on a park bench, and then he sees his way of getting back to Normandy. There's a platoon of 40 guys lined up in formation. The formation looks horrible. Their uniforms look horrible. It's a giant pile of shitbags, and Matt Urban goes and talks to the officer leading them, and he's like, what is this? Who are these guys? Urban then finds out that this platoon of men is unaffectionately nicknamed the Dirty 40, and basically it's 40 shitbags that had all tried to dodge the draft or had faked an injury, basically trying to do anything they could to not get shipped off to combat, and now they've essentially just been thrown at this hospital to do grunt work and labor because nobody trusts them to actually do anything important. Basically, nobody wants.
That's the thing. And this also goes back to why I don't really trust the draft, because these are not men loyal to the fight, right? Like, regardless of my position on whether or not we should be in wars and all that stuff, the bottom line is I don't think a draft is effective for getting loyal men. You know, these are just men who are there because they're there, you know? And their morale is much more reliant on whether or not you can actually win the battle rather than just wanting to generally be there and be a person of importance in the war, you know? And I'm not saying like a hero or anything. Like, I'm not saying, you know, some narcissist being like, I'm the main character, I'm the hero. I'm just saying like the people who signed up are people who want to be there for the cause, while the people who are drafted most likely aren't. So their morale, their willingness to defect, things like that, are going to be a lot more stringent on winning. So these are people who lose morale faster, defect easier, things like that. So that's just my general, like, outside of whether or not the draft is necessary or we need the men or whatever the case may be. That's just my general thought on it, because it's like you're not getting these men who are there because they want to be there. They're just doing the job, and if they can find a way to get out of the job, they'll get out.
To deal with them, the officer in charge is just babysitting them, and they're a giant pain in the ass. So Matt Urban offers to take over. He says that he'll start training them. He's got a lot of combat experience. He's a good officer. He's a leader. Let me take it over. I just need.
Now, of course, a good leader could change that draftee's mind, but at the end of the day, they're still not there because they want to be there.
Something constructive.
They just want to go home. They just want to get it over with, go home.
To do. I'm going nuts sitting in my hospital bed all day. The officer is like, yeah, okay, sure, take him. I don't want him. Whatever. For the next couple of weeks, Matt Urban whips these guys into shape the best that he can, and he's not exactly working with the cream of the crop, but he gets them to the point where they're kind of looking like they're soldiers, and convinces the chain of command that this platoon is ready to go see combat in Normandy. At which point Urban is like, look, I know I can't be their officer when they're in theater, but I would at least like to travel to Normandy with them and hand them off to the officer that's taking over. And the chain of command lets him do it, so Matt Urban, with a cane and 40 fuck-ups, board a ship, cross the English Channel, make it over to Normandy. He lands on Utah Beach again a second time. He hands off the Dirty 40 to the officer that's
Dude, how how many men? I want to know how many men landed on Utah Beach that much, even that much. And now, of course, I'm sure, in all seriousness, like obviously, certain officers probably ran back and forth, but it is funny to definitely hear. Not only did he land on Utah Beach after the battle, but also he did it twice.
Expecting them, at which point he's supposed to go get back on the ship and go back to the hospital, but he wanders over to a field medical station where he finds the newest, greenest ambulance driver he can find and orders him to drive him to the front lines where his battalion is.
So is he in like actual military dress? Because he's still wounded and he's walking with a cane, I think you mentioned, things like that. So they're like, well, you're wounded, but you're not expected to actually stay in theater. You're coming back. And he's like, right. So what we're going to do is we're going to put you in like a more formal uniform, But then he's like, I don't know, maybe he swapped out of it if they did that to hopefully make double sure that he's coming back. Because that's the thing, he's not there to be a combatant. So I can't imagine they just said, get your combat uniform on, but I don't know.
He gets dropped off at the front
Obviously.
lines in an active battle. Urban doesn't realize this at the time, but he has just been dropped off right in the middle of Operation Cobra, which happened after Normandy. Basically, the Allied strategy was to back up a little bit and then carpet bomb the ever-living shit out of the Germans. The Germans in this sector that his men are fighting, once they backed up to allow for the carpet bombing, ran up and occupied the fortified positions that they had just had and weathered the storm of the bombing. And now they're using those fortified positions against them. Matt comes hobbling up in a cane, gets into a depression with some men. Nobody knows what the fuck is going on. The Germans are shooting at them and he's like, who's in charge? Nobody knows who's in charge. Apparently the company commander has been killed. At this point, Matt Urban with his cane is like, I guess I'm in charge. Starts issuing orders to his men to spread out so they don't get taken out by a single mortar and starts getting everything going. As he kind of gets
and that's another thing, like I heard this is unique, but in military strategy, but the US is structured on a very dynamic thing. Like, okay, so you have, a battalion with the captain. The captain is out of commission. Well, now, a lower rank like a lieutenant takes the place of leader, basically. And they don't sit there, wait for another leader to come. They adapt on the fly for those situations. That, like, I guess at some point it could even get down to one of the privates being the leader, which I don't know how that's decided because, like, a platoon, for example, I think is like a bunch of privates and like, a sergeant of some sort, I believe. So it's like, well, if you have 5 of the men being privates and all the officers are taken out, or all the higher ranked even less than taken out, who becomes the leader? I'd imagine they'd probably have a system based off who's the most experienced private or not. But I don't know. I wouldn't know that.
Footing and evaluates what's going on. They had 3 tanks that were supporting this company. 2 of them have been knocked out, and the other one is kind of sitting in a no man's land. It's operable, but nobody's manning it right now. They've got to get to that tank, get it up and running, and start using it for suppressing fire on these German machine gun nests. Matt Urban sends 2 guys out to the tank to man it. Both of them wind up getting mowed down, at which point Matt Urban is like, I guess I'm doing it. He then proceeds to hobble run through German machine gun fire, makes it to the tank, climbs on top of it to the 50 caliber machine gun, and starts...
Like, when he talks about incidences like this, like where it's like the guy's clearly very, very wounded. I mean, of course, he's had time to heal at this point. He's not that wounded. But, and they just see this guy, this enemy hobbling around, be it the Germans in World War II, be it the Vietnamese and the Vietnam War. It's like I wonder what's going through their heads, like thinking like, this guy's serious.
laying down suppressing fire, giving enough cover for a tank commander to run up and get inside the tank. The tank then starts moving towards the Germans, providing cover and suppressing fire as the entire battalion starts moving with him. And they crush the Germans. Matt Urban showed up injured to a unit that was in shambles and turned the entire tide of the battle in a matter of minutes.
That's a good leader.
Sergeants that was there that day that had been a replacement troop that had come in after Matt Urban had already been shipped to the hospital had this to say, quote, "One of the craziest officers suddenly appeared before us, yelling like a madman and waving a gun in his hand. He was probably a replacement, never in combat before. He got us on our feet, though, and gave us our confidence back and saved our lives." Another platoon sergeant had this to say.
It was not an actual relief officer of any kind. He's been in battle plenty.
Quote, "Urban moved forward and damned if the U.S. Army didn't move forward also. He bellied up to the tank and amid heavy gunfire, scrambled aboard and manned the machine gun. The driver took heart with Urban aboard. The tank roared forward and Urban tore the hillside apart with that gun." Because of this, his battalion commander writes him up for the Medal of Honor and ships off the paperwork. Urban stays with his men as they continue.
I guarantee you he's not going to get it because, you know, the higher-ups are going to be like, he disobeyed orders, blah, 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 and again, politics. It doesn't matter that regardless, he was a hero. All that matters is the politics of it.
Advancing further into enemy territory. About a week later, on August 2nd, he takes shrapnel to his chest and is told that he needs to go back to the hospital. He promptly refuses and stays in the fight anyways. 4 days after that, on August 6th, his battalion commander is wounded in combat and he's shipped off, and now Urban is the commander of the battalion. From here, Urban leads the 2nd Battalion of the 60th Infantry Regiment into combat, and they are taking town after town after town. And again,
that's actually because, like, obviously privates, because they're like the lowest rank, they generally don't have any real sway as leaders, right? Like, you're never going to see a private be a de facto leader, right? So if you have, like, you know, 2 lieutenants in, I believe, a platoon, is that the unit size they lead? I wonder how that's decided who's the commanding officer, if for some reason you do have that many. It would be interesting to see that.
On August 15th, he's wounded and refuses to get medevaced. And this is where
of course he
nickname
does.
Of the Ghost goes from a running joke that started back in Sicily to an actual badass nickname.
I mean, at this point, he more or less is kind of like a ghost, just sticking around no matter what.
He is a legend among his men. This dude got shot by a tank, survived, got sent to a hospital in England, escaped the hospital, made it back to the front lines, saved their ass in the middle of battle, and has been injured 2 more times and refused medevac. He's unkillable. He might actually be dead, and he is a ghost leading them into combat.
Might as well be.
Under Matt Urban's leadership, the 2nd Battalion of the 60th Infantry Regiment kind of becomes known as the problem solvers for the 9th Infantry Division. Whatever the toughest mission is, that's who they're giving it to. And on September 2nd, 1944, that tough assignment was to take out Philippeville, where the Germans had concentrated all their defenses. If they can take out Philippeville and clear out the Germans, they'll have a direct shot at the Meuse River. Now, the problem is that the 9th Infantry Division is not in control of that sector, so the 9th Infantry Division loans out the 2nd Battalion of the 60th Infantry Regiment to a different division to have them go clear out Philippeville. So when Matt Urban and his battalion show up, they are told by this new chain of command to basically run into the town, into enemy gunfire, and just take it over.
I mean, of course, that's kind of like the tactic, because especially if it's a British leadership or chain of command, because I know that did occasionally happen where it's like you've got some crossover, but like, regardless of the nationality of the other division, because I think it's the battalion that moves into the division or something like that. Regardless of the chain of command, it's like, thing is, they're not your chain of command. They do not know you. They do not care. It's just get the job done is what they see.
Artillery support, no air support, no backup, nothing.
Good day, sir.
Now, why would they do that? I'm not quite 100% sure, but I'm fairly confident it's because this is the point of the war where now it's not a question of is America going to win? It's a question of how soon is America going to win? And a lot of high-ranking officers want to be the first guy into Germany. They want to be the first.
Yeah, that's the thing I don't like about officers. I obviously respect enlisted men, maybe even some lower ranked officers, but when you get to the generals, and when you get to the officers that aren't actually in the combat zone, at least not very close, or like not in it, maybe they're like somewhere behind the lines, kind of. It's like, these are glory-seeking, pathetic men, in my opinion. Just what will do the headlines? I've said it about, what can't I think of his name? Not Patton. What's the other one? Anyways, but yeah, just these men don't actually care for their juniors. Obviously, the enlisted men, what's up? Have I pre-watched the video? No. But obviously, how's it going? I haven't seen you in a while. But officers, I have problems with officer ranks. In my opinion, they're usually not people or at least higher officers are not usually people I respect. It's more the lower officers at highest.
Person to do this, the first person to do that. Basically, they want to overachieve to, win a medal or something.
Right.
And in doing so, a lot of the time, they put their men on the ground at an increased risk so they can make themselves look good. And I think that's what's going on here. Regardless, Matt Urban attempts to follow orders. He approaches the town, and as they approach, they get hit with a humongous artillery barrage from the Germans. Matt Urban orders his men to pull back out of artillery range and then radios back to them like, hey, we're not going to be able to do this without artillery support or air support or something. It's not possible. We're going to get decimated before we even make it into the town. The colonel in charge of this operation then tells Matt Urban, that's not available right now. Just push into the town. Again, I'm assuming because the artillery hasn't caught up and they're outrunning supply lines and they're outrunning all their logistical support.
That's another problem, is they're outrunning the things they need to survive. So that just leads to more problems down the line.
Because they're pushing further in as fast as possible, trying to make the officers look good. Matt Urban then tells them, we'll wait for the artillery support. I'm not going to go in there and get all my men killed for no reason. And the colonel then threatens to have him court-martialed and calls him a coward.
That's just called being pragmatic. Pragmatic, not pragmatic. Pragmatic. That's just being smart, analyzing the situation and coming to a conclusion based off the situation.
To which Matt Urban replies, do whatever you got to do. I'm not sending my guys in there to die. So what the colonel does is he calls up all the new reinforcement troops from the rear that just got here from America that have not seen combat and orders them to march past Matt Urban's unit and straight into the town. And to nobody's surprise, not only do they not take the town, they don't even make it to the town because they get lit up by German artillery. They take so many casualties, in fact, that night, the general in charge of that colonel who's in charge of Matt Urban decides to have a meeting with the two of them and a bunch of other officers to come up with a plan on how they're going to take this town. The colonel explains to the general he thinks that they should push in right now with everything that they have, and Matt Urban says, we're going to get absolutely destroyed by German artillery. We need you to
It's a waste of men. Like a good general, and of course, when I say I don't really like generals, I'm talking like as a whole. I'm not talking, obviously there are good generals and good higher ranked officers, but a good general, good leader is going to be like, analyze the situation, be like, you're right, this is a suicide mission. So how about we not do that? How about we actually sit there, wait, because I don't care about glory. I care about making sure the men are alive, making sure we could take the position when we can take the position, not trying to meet some deadline that won't be realistic anyways, won't be even possible, most likely. So I'm hoping that General leans towards that.
to silence the German artillery, and
I don't think he will, though.
then I will take my regiment in there and we will clear out the town. It's what we do. The general immediately sides with Matt Urban, says he's going to get artillery moved in there first thing in the morning, at which point the colonel throws a bitch fit, telling the general that this man is a coward and he should be
yes, the politics of it. He's not a coward. He's smart.
court-martialed, and he doesn't know what he's talking about. The general then snaps at the colonel. I'm paraphrasing, but roughly what he says is, if he had followed your orders yesterday, him and all of his men would be dead. That man is Matt Urban. I specifically requested him and his unit from the 9th Infantry Division come help us with this because they're one of the best units in the entire fucking war. That man's...
Remember, being a good unit is not being a brave unit. It's not being the first unit into battle. It's being the first unit, or it's being the unit that wins. It's being the unit that can strategize to win. That is a good unit. That's the goal of any war, to win, not to be slaughtered.
himself out of the hospital and saved his unit at St. Lo and was instrumental in spearheading the entire breakout. He then turns back to Urban, who's shocked that this general even knows him by name, and says, you're gonna have whatever you need first thing in the morning, go get it done.
I bet somebody feels pretty stupid right now.
Matt Urban leaves the meeting like, all right, I got what we need. Let's go figure out what we're up against. So he grabs 2 NCOs. This is like 11 o'clock at night on September 2nd, and they sneak up to the enemy position. They kill several guards with garrote wire to figure out what the enemy has for defenses. After they take out the guards, they get eyes on the enemy position. It looks like there's an entire German regiment there. They've got tanks. They've got machine gun nests. It's going to be a fight. From here, they make it back to the
sure it is.
Matt Urban sets up the battle plan, gets a couple of hours of sleep, wakes up at 4 a.m. on September 3rd, and gets all of his men ready and into position, ready to launch this attack. And they wait until 5 a.m. when the humongous artillery barrage from the Americans hits to silence.
And that's another thing. You gotta, because you're relying on an artillery barrage, so you have to make sure things get scheduled. The artillery is going to fire at this time. It's going to stop firing at this time. Therefore, we can charge at the time it stops firing. And these have to be very particular moments because there's a whole plan scheduled, you know?
The German artillery. They storm the town. It's going as good as it can. Obviously, they're taking casualties, running
Obviously.
machine gun fire, but it's going as well as you could possibly expect. As they advance further into this town, they get pinned down by German machine gun fire, at which point Matt Urban decides he's going to do Matt Urban things and rushes the German machine gun nest, throws a grenade into it, blows it up, runs to the next one, hucks a second grenade into it, and then feels like he got hit in the neck by a fucking sledgehammer and drops to the ground. He hears the grenade go off and the gun goes silent, and then he wakes up with medics sitting over him, and it's not just any medic, it's the battalion surgeon. He starts to come to a little bit more. He's wet, covered in a ton of his own blood, and he can't move, not because he's physically unable to, but because one of his soldiers has both of his thumbs pressed into the bullet hole in his neck, trying to stop the bleeding. As the
That works because obviously I've watched him. I've watched the channel Kentucky Ballistics, who got shot in the jugular himself, or well, a malfunction with his gun caused it, and yeah, plugging his neck kept him alive long enough to get to the hospital and get proper medical treatment, and that saved his life. So yeah, definitely plugging the jugular, probably not so much to where you stop the bleeding, obviously, because you know, brain function and all that, but just enough to where you minimize the bleeding and allow some flow to the brain is probably the most reliable way of doing it.
Surgeon is trying to work on him. So Matt Urban's laying there trying not to move, and then the priest from the battalion winds up making it there, and Matt Urban remembers the priest asking the doctor, is he gonna make it? And the doctor looks over to the priest and just shakes his head no. Matt Urban hears this. He thinks he's gonna die. All of the men around hear this. They think that their fearless leader, the unkillable ghost, has just been killed, and the last...
Remember, in war, you're never unkillable. That's the thing. You know, even the best can get astray. You know, stray bullets, some stray shrapnel. Maybe there was a sniper they didn't see because he's like 400 yards away, somewhere in like a building undercover.
Time they see him, he's getting read his last rites on the battlefield by that priest before being loaded up onto the hood of a Jeep and driven to the rear. Matt Urban survives and actually makes it to the aid station
I
somehow,
mean,
and once he gets
yeah, Ghost can't die. Again, I don't know what was being done to his neck to warrant him surviving for that long, but I'm not sure if anyone was keeping pressure on it, what the deal was.
there, whether he realizes it or not, he is triaged, meaning he is sorted into a category of how severe his wounds are, which is going to determine how quick he gets treatment.
Let me guess, he's basically put on don't bother. Like, he's not dead, but he's basically living dead.
There's basically 4 categories. There's urgent, which means this guy can survive, but we need to get him to surgery right now.
Right.
He's on the next ambulance out of here to an operating room or to a hospital. Then there's delayed, which means this guy's critically wounded. He needs surgery. He needs better care that we can't give him here, but he's stable for the moment. If somebody else needs that ambulance more, take it. Then there's minimal, which is like walking wounded. This guy's messed up. He needs care. He can't go back into battle. We need to get him to the hospital, but he's stable. He's fine to hang out here for a while. And then there's the 4th category that Matt Urban gets sorted into, which is expectant, which means his wounds are so bad that he's going to die. There's nothing anyone can do
Mortal wounds where life support considered
for him. So we're just not going to waste space on the transport, and we're going to try to help people that have a chance at surviving. So he's basically shoved into.
And that is the thing about war. You have to make those calls. You have to sit there and be like, he's alive now, but will he be alive long enough to spend the resources on, Like, because even if he could survive to the hospital, is he going to survive, going into the hospital, surviving the surgery, even if they get him into the surgery, in a relatively stable enough condition, because he's just that badly wounded. And yeah, this is not a good wound to have to be in that scenario. He's basically a walking corpse at this point to them.
Receives the minimum amount of care, basically just trying to comfort him until he dies. But he doesn't die. He lays there for 2 days with a hole in his neck, and eventually it gets to the point where he gets so thirsty, he's getting all his fluids from IVs, but that doesn't do much to actually, quench your thirst in your throat, where he starts writing on a piece of paper asking the nurses for water. After asking multiple times, they eventually come up with like a cup of water and a teaspoon and pour a teaspoon of water into his throat, which sends him into a coughing fit for what seems like forever and is extremely painful. All right, no more of that. He then eventually winds up getting transported to a hospital back in England again. Once he gets there, he's evaluated by the doctor that's kind of his new primary care guy, and he's writing on paper to communicate because his vocal cords are completely shot, and he basically tells the doctor that he can't drink, but he's super thirsty. He tells the doctor they tried giving him a little bit of water with a teaspoon, sends him into a coughing fit. It's extremely painful. It just is a shitty situation. The doctor looks over to the nurse and is like, go in my office, 3rd drawer down in my desk, there's a bottle of bourbon and a shot glass. Bring it here. He then proceeds to pour Matt Urban a shot and tells him to drink it in 1 gulp. Matt Urban's like, okay, you're the doctor, fuck it, expecting this to hurt extremely bad, takes the shot, goes right down like it was nothing. Matt Urban's shocked. The doctor then explains.
I'd like to see are they going to get into it? Because I'd like to see the science into that logic.
Explains to him, yeah, trickling water down your throat 1 little teaspoon at a time would make anybody cough, neck wound or not. Your vocal cords are shot. You might never talk again, but you can at least eat and swallow.
This drink, I like it.
I know, it's great, right?
Another!
From here, he's up and walking within a couple of days, and then within a week, he's requesting to go back to combat by writing it down on a sheet of paper, saying that he can still lead his troops by writing the commands. To which he is...
Yeah, you'd need someone else with you, which would be pointless, but sure, why not?
Absolutely fucking not. So he waits for a couple of days and then requests 5 days of leave to go up to Scotland to, go sightseeing or whatever for his personal morale.
Sure.
He then proceeds to snag a ride on a cargo plane across the English Channel and then hitchhike all the way into Germany where his men are. He gets to where his troops are at and he steps out of the Jeep, and the first thing anybody says as they're all standing there with their jaws on the floor is, holy shit, he really is a ghost.
What the hell are you? No! No! No!
For From here, it's a party. All the boys are pumped. They're super excited that their leader actually survived. He really is the unkillable ghost that they all thought he was. From here,
Yeah.
he hangs out with the boys for a couple of days, and they're getting ready to mobilize again to go back into Germany and finish this war. And Matt Urban is straight up ready to go with them. He's ready to write orders down on a sheet of paper and get back into combat. The chain of command, on the other hand,
Don't know how you're going to do that.
Absolutely not willing to let that happen, and they ship him back to the hospital, and then he gets shipped back home to America. And at a glance, it might appear like him escaping from the hospital, making it all the way to Germany was a waste of his time, but it wasn't. It was actually extremely important. Because you gotta remember—
Yeah, that's a major morale boost. This guy was fatally, or at least presumed fatally wounded, and then he steps out onto the battlefield in front of his troops again. However much longer later, it's like, yeah, that is going to be a very significant morale boost. That's going to be like, man, if this guy could make it through this, maybe I can too.
Matt Urban's the morale officer. He is in charge of making sure the men are motivated to fight. And Matt Urban is really living up to his role as morale officer because he's done incredible things for their morale, because there's nothing that could be more devastating to a combat unit than seeing their star guy, their best player, the man that's fearless, that they follow into battle, that they're trusting to get them back alive. To see him die in combat on the field is devastating, because every single dude is now thinking, Matt Urban was better than me. I was going to follow that guy anywhere. And if they killed him, what chance do I have?
Yeah,
to
exactly.
have that on your mind for the next 2 weeks, and then to have a Jeep pull up and to see that guy step out, literally coming back from the fucking dead, does unspeakable things to your motivation and your outlook on how this is going to go.
True.
Matt Urban makes it back to England, and he is promptly court-martialed because apparently while he was gone for 14 days on 5 days of leave, they had scheduled his award ceremony for his Silver Star, and guess who didn't show up? Matt Urban. The military tribunal takes one look at Matt Urban's service record and what happened and goes, yeah, he's not getting in trouble at all. Case dismissed. Also, you're promoted to lieutenant colonel. From here, Matt heads back home to America, winds up retiring shortly afterward, goes back home to Buffalo, winds up moving to Holland, Michigan. Somewhere along the way, he regained his voice, although it is pretty hoarse for the rest of his life. He then spent the rest of his life being a youth athletic coach, working with kids. He wound up being a coach to a boxer known as Cassius Clay, aka Muhammad Ali.
Yeah.
And that's it. He just lived out the rest of his life as a normal guy after being one of the biggest badasses on the entire planet. And then in the late 1970s, he caught up with some of his friends from the military, and they asked if he ever got that Medal of Honor that he was recommended for. And he said, no, doesn't really know what happened to it, didn't really care, wasn't doing it for the medals anyways. Some of his friends then wrote into the government asking them to correct this oversight, and they dug into it. But the problem is that a couple years prior in 1973, there was a major fire at the National Archives, and most of the documentation from World War II had been destroyed. And almost all of it from the 9th Infantry Division was destroyed. All of it except for literally one box of documents was recovered. And in that box was the recommendation from his now deceased battalion commander recommending him for the Medal of Honor. This, combined with testimony from some of the surviving members of his unit, would lead to him ultimately getting the Medal of Honor in 1980. And with that, he is then put into contention for the title of the most decorated soldier of World War II, comparable only to Audie Murphy. And that is the story of Matt Urban, one of the greatest infantry officers in American history. Thank you for watching. Best way to support the channel is go buy some merch, maybe drink some Echelon. Links for both of those are over at thefatelectrician.com. Quack bang, out.
Okay, this video is a lot longer than I thought it was going to be.
This guy is probably one of the most horrifically underrated and underpublicized people I've ever covered.
So yeah, stream a lot longer than I thought it was going to be. We could actually see some of him talking. I want to hear his voice because
to be a model. I think being a model, dress up. Here we had the community center on the other side of the tracks. You know, we had all races, all colors, and just tremendous. That I'd come in, I'd always be clean shaven, clean shirt on, trying to model for the youngsters. I'd park my convertible right in front of the place, and I think all this is what they picked up. It's a goal that, hey, when I grow up, I want to go to college.
Let me see here. Yeah. You know what? Hold on. Oh, I'm showing my thing.
They give to you. I meet these kids. I make trips back home, and when I talk to them, you can see it in their eyes. You can, you can see it in their conversation.
I just want to
They
finish
look to
this.
you like they went to a father, and boy, you just can't buy that.
Okay, that's it. Let me go to full. Got a new transition. I guess it's not that new now. Let's see. Okay, so yeah, that will be the stream. Anyways, let me go check here. Let's have a look here. Because I do want to get into rating more, so I do want to at least browse, see if there's anyone interested. Okay. Let's go here. Yeah, dude, that's the thing. Like, I don't have very many people to raid. Let me actually real quick just do a little thing so I remember. Let's go here. But yeah, so so with that being said, yeah, I think we're about ready to head out. So hopefully that will give me a video to post on YouTube. It should work. I had some trouble with VOD audio, so that should definitely work. I got that. I should get that fixed. So yeah, until next time, I will see you then. Goodbye.